So when you did the meditation on compassion, what happened?
I have a lot of bias.
You have a lot of bias? So
around those hostile people.
Around the what people?
Hostile people.
Hostile people.
Yeah, I just want them to take responsibility and I want them to fix things and straighten up their acts.
Yeah, get on with it. Stop bugging me. Yeah. Why should I have compassion for you when you don't even take care of yourself? Yeah. Uh-huh.
When I thought about the results of their negative action in the future, that helped me to kind of drop the here and now junk.
Okay. Okay, so when you thought about these hostile and obnoxious people and the karma they were creating for the future, it really helps your mind to settle down and become more open towards them. Yeah, more compassionate.
When I was meditating on someone who's done a lot of destructive things recently, this doubt arose in my mind, like, can you really do this? Or can you really change? That kind of just was like this moment of doubt.
So you began to wonder whether you could even change your mind from the anger.
No, it was doubt rose as to
whether that person could really change. Yeah. Oh, okay. I'm wishing them to be free of creating the causes for misery, but is that a realistic wish? Can they really do it? So you're wondering maybe they don't have the Buddha nature.
Well, it was a moment, but I kind of just noted how that moment came in there.
Yes. Yeah, sometimes those thoughts can kind of come shooting in when you're least expecting them. And then you realize, oh, there's some doubt in my mind. Yeah, and I need to apply the antidote and, see the wrong way of thinking. Mm-hmm. Anybody else have that doubt about, if the people you don't like can really change? Yeah. Of course, when they don't like you, you can change. But actually, they're not allowed to not like you. Yeah, because that's one of the rules of the universe. At least my universe is everybody has to like me. Is that a rule of your universe? Yeah, nobody is allowed to dislike me. It's just not. It's not realistic. It's not beneficial. Everybody should like me. Why not? It's unconstitutional.
And if you don't, I'm not going to change to please you.
Yeah. Yes.
I realize, the movement back and forth is a possibility of my being able to be open to hostile people. If you catch a glimpse and a taste of that.
Mm.
But I was also aware of how quickly
Okay.
the default position.
Yeah, so...
Yeah, it's just so more natural.
Yeah, it's so much easier to like the nice people, isn't it? And, we're perfectly willing to like the hostile people. They should just change and be nice. Right? Nice means they do what we want them to do. Yeah. Because they may be nice in somebody else's eyes, but we don't care about that. They have to be nice in our eyes, which means agree with our ideas, do what we want them to do. Yeah. But it's nice that you saw a glimpse that it's actually possible. Yeah, so you need to talk to her. Who else?
I feel like I'm wired backwards.
That
I'm wired backwards.
you're wired backwards?
People that spoke to me and benefited me, and had I didn't have a strong feeling in front.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And
wishing him the positive state that he needs in order to move from his really destructive position. And that, I feel a lot of strength in that.
Mm.
So when I think of my husband, it was, I didn't feel this glowing, loving thing. I kind of felt the same thing. I wish you all the positive support
Mhm.
that you need in order to, reach moment.
Mhm.
Not emotional.
That's actually quite fine. That's good. You don't. What you want is more equanimity between all of the people. Yeah. What we don't want is this kind of, oh, I'm so attached to this person, so they have to attain enlightenment first, and they've got to be forever happy. What you want is an equal feeling towards everybody of genuine concern, genuine good wishes, but without the stickiness of the attachment. Yeah?
Expecting more of a warm glow, though.
Huh?
Expecting more of a warm glow.
Oh, you want more of a warm glow? Yeah, well, if you can increase your compassion for everybody equally and get more of a warm glow. Yeah, try that. Yeah. Doesn't have to just be towards your husband. Yeah.
I found it hardest to do with people I like because I would fall into self-centered distress very easily. Like, oh, I should have done more. Oh, I should have done this and that. And then thinking about how that wish for them to be free of suffering comes back and became what I should have done.
Ah, okay. So you had a hard time really staying with the wish for them to be free of suffering and quickly assumed responsibility for their life and assumed responsibility for their emotions. Are you responsible for their emotions?
No.
Yeah, so that's something to really be careful of because that can create a lot of difficulties in relationships with people because people don't, okay, there's some people who like to be the victim and they want somebody to rescue them, so they want somebody else to be responsible for their emotions. That's not healthy, okay? There's other people who really don't want anybody to be responsible for their emotions. They, would like to be respected as an autonomous individual. Yeah, and so when they see somebody who's trying to fix them, they, sometimes get quite upset about it. Yeah. So it's this thing of, how do we develop respect for other people, yeah, and let them live their lives. At the same time, do what we can to help them, but recognize that we can't control them. Yeah, there's a lot of different components in here. And somehow, thinking, oh, if I had only done X, Y, Z, then they would be in a totally different space right now. And, how do you know that? Yeah? How do we know that? We don't know that. Yeah. So, and this is one of the famous guilt-producing things, when we're too involved in a sticky emotional way with somebody else's life, then, something goes wrong for them, then we blame ourselves and we feel guilty about it. Yeah, that's not compassion. That's not compassion. Yeah. Because from a Buddhist viewpoint, guilt is a negative emotion. Guilt is very different than regret. Yeah. And so you find sometimes, especially in cases of suicide, if somebody suicides, then the rest of the family feels very guilty, and the friends do. If only I had done this, if only I had done that. Yeah. But there's no sense or purpose in that kind of self-recrimination, because, unless you had a really negative thought towards them and, put the pills or the gun out there hoping they would use it, there was no negative intention on your part, and you're not responsible. Yeah. And I think suicide is, my personal opinion, I mean, of course, it's incredible tragedy that people don't see meaning and purpose for their lives, but I think it's also, in one way, a huge act of self-centeredness. Yeah? Because that person at that time cannot see that their actions influence other people, and they can't let the love that other people have for them in. So the mind is very twisted, very in incredible pain and distress, but it's due to the self-centered mind. Yeah, that's the real culprit in situations like that. So it's not that, anybody else in the family did anything wrong. It's, the self-centered mind, which is our enemy, isn't it? That immobilizes us in that kind of way. Yeah? And so then the response to suicide is forgiveness and compassion, because that person had no control over their mind and was completely blind to the reality of their situation and how many people really do care about them. Mm-hmm.
Do you think it helps a person who does something that haven't received anything positively? I mean, this is going to sound like, really off the wall, but my childhood physician committed suicide. And they committed suicide out of the blue, like I didn't tell anything about him at all for a long time. But out of the blue, the day he committed suicide, I remembered all of his kindness.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, and I found out the next day that he killed himself. It was really quite devastating, I said, geez, why didn't I pick up the phone? Man, I did that. Why didn't I pick up the phone and call him and tell him what I was thinking?
Mm-hmm.
I have a hope that in that moment of transition, you really thought as a patient.
Yeah. I think those positive thoughts definitely influence people. That's why we make prayers and dedications for them after people die, or when they're ill, or when they're facing, harmful situations. Because I think those positive thoughts do benefit. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When I did the one about the neutral person yesterday, it occurred to me, I know about as much as people who are close to me, and those I consider challenging, as I do about the neutral person, because they've changed, and I'm hanging on to this historical piece that is just one tiny aspect of who they are.
Yeah.
And it's,
Okay, so you saw that having the attachment and the aversion and the apathy doesn't make any sense, because actually you know as much about all three of them, or you know as much about somebody in one category as in the other, because the people are constantly changing, and the people in the dear ones category and the people in the I can't stand category they don't have a fixed personality. Yeah. So they've actually changed, and the whole meaning of their life isn't just how they've acted towards you. Yeah. That's good. Kind of even things out a bit, huh? Yeah. Yeah. Allows us to be free of some of that stickiness of the attachment and the despondency and, or the stirred upness of the anger. Yeah.
So, a follow-up on what she was saying. So, what's the difference between, okay, they don't have a fixed personality, I get that, but what about habitual tendencies that are repeating?
Yeah, okay, they don't have a fixed personality, but they have habitual tendencies, so isn't that kind of tantamount to a fixed personality? At least in my mind it is. They keep doing the same thing over and over again, so it must be, not quite fixed, but pretty fixed. No, they change. They change. Everybody can change. I mean, people can really change dramatically in the course of one lifetime. Yeah. I mean, people. I'm talking about the people, the residents at the Abbey. Sometimes their old friends come here, and they're very surprised how much they've changed. Yeah. Some of you who've been coming for years, do you think we change? I'm more ferocious. Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, and the whole thing of habitual tendencies, that's all they are, is just habits. A habit is not a thing. A habit is just, there's some similarities in a behavior, so we give it a name. Yeah, or there's some similarities in an emotional state, so we give it a name. But that doesn't mean that it's fixed and that that's who that person is. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think too sometimes when I think somebody is a certain fixed way, I look to see how I'm relating to that person, because I can contribute to that seemingly fixed.
Yes.
If I'm looking for it, I'll probably find it. It's
right. Yeah, that if we have a rigid idea of somebody, we consistently see them that way. And even more than that, we act towards them as if they were that person, and that encourages their behavior. So that's getting back to what I was saying yesterday about people are like pianos, and if we play them the wrong way, we encourage a certain behavior. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is coming back to your question from yesterday. This is what happens in the school system a lot, and in families. A child has some behavior, and then all the adults lock onto it and only relate to the child through that behavior, thus strengthening it, and teaching the child that they are that behavior when they're not. Yeah? And it creates such a strong self-image in the child that it's actually hard for them to release later on. Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit more about compassion as an antidote to self-pity, habitual feeling?
Could I speak more about that? Yeah. Yeah, so compassion is an antidote to self-pity and as something that can actually help with depression too. It's interesting, I'm writing a book on compassion. Can I do a little promo? It's done with a psychologist who's a professor at Eastern Washington University, Russell Colts, and the book's entitled Living with an Open Heart, Compassion in Everyday Life. Anyway, I wrote a chapter in there about compassion as something that can help with depression, because this is something His Holiness Dalai Lama speaks a lot about. And Russell wanted that omitted because he's a psychologist and he can only say things that are based on scientific evidence, and nobody's done a study about that. So, it can't be proven, and he shouldn't give kind of advice like that in a book. And I said, well, it's my entry. And he said, well, it doesn't matter, people don't always read the book that carefully and can make mistakes about this. So it got taken out. I'm going to put it in another book. But it's something that His Holiness speaks quite a bit about. about compassion as an antidote to low self-esteem. Yeah, and and at first when I heard him speaking like that, I didn't quite understand it because I had the usual Western retort. What's your usual retort when you hear that? When you hear somebody say, compassion for yourself is a remedy for low self-esteem or is a remedy for depression, my first thought is, well, I have to have compassion. If I don't have compassion for myself, how am I going to have compassion for others? So how can compassion be an antidote for my own low self-esteem or my own depression? That was my kind of automatic thought when I heard him first talking about this. But because His Holiness is my teacher, I try and think about what he says, and not just throw it out. And eventually I came to realize that, when we generate compassion and not personal distress, then our focus is on other people. Okay, when our focus is on other people, it can't be on ourselves at the same time. And what is involved in not every type of depression, but some types of depression, and what is involved in low self-esteem is what we call inappropriate attention, an unhealthy, inappropriate way of regarding ourselves. We're paying attention to ourselves in an inappropriate, improper way. Okay? So when we're kind of hooked and addicted to that improper way of looking at ourselves, generating compassion for others completely pulls us out of that unhealthy self-focus, and it places the focus on others, and by doing that again and again, we can't have that same unhealthy self-attention, okay? And that gives us some space then to learn to pay attention to ourselves, but in a healthier way, in a kinder way, in a more compassionate way. Okay? So it really, it's like, how when we start to spin around all of our put-downs for ourselves, I'm so bad, I'm so stupid, I'm so limited, nobody loves me, I can't do anything right, other people are better than me, I'm not going to amount to anything in my life, my parents told me I couldn't do anything right, they were wrong, they were right, and nobody loves me, and for good reasons, because I'm completely defective and I'm full of shame because something's inherently wrong with me and I was born defective, and what can I do when the whole world is helpless? Yeah, and we get involved in that kind of way of thinking sometimes, don't we?
Right.
Yeah? What word did you keep hearing in all of that? Hi, me. It's like so self-centered in the completely wrong way. Yeah? And the thing is, the more we do that, the more we just kind of believe it and get familiar with it, and it's totally garbage. Yeah? So when we have to extract our mind from that bad habit and pay attention to others and care about others and see that we can do something to help them, it totally changes our own self-image. Yeah? And I think that's one of the best things for people who are feeling down in the dumps to do, is go and volunteer and take care of somebody else, or have a pet, or grow a garden. Do something where you are tending for something else outside of yourself. And then you can see, I can have a good effect. My cats love me. My pet frog loves me. My plants, are growing. My garden is growing. I'm volunteering, you know, at a clinic or, you know, at a school, and look, people welcome me with a smile when I come in. They're glad to see me. You know, I can do something worthwhile for others. And seeing that, you know, completely changes our own low self-esteem. Okay? So I think that's what His Holiness is really getting at, and is trying to get us to see. Yeah? Uh-huh.
Do you think cultivating compassion would also help with anxiety?
Would cultivating compassion help with anxiety? It certainly wouldn't hurt. And again, I think it would help a lot, because a lot of anxiety, at least when I look at my own anxiety, what am I anxious about? Me. What's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to the things I'm doing? What's going to happen to the people I care about? You know? So again, compassion pulls us out of that unhealthy mental ruminating and spinning, and opens our eyes to, oh wow, look, there's other living beings that I can have a positive effect on. Yeah, there's other living beings that care. Yeah. So I think this would be, you know, a great thing to do for gang members. You know? In fact, I was reading this book, what was it? No Matter How Loud I Shout. And in it was telling, one of the stories it told was about one young gang member who, the judge was really smart and had him, he had to take care of a young girl who was at a school. She had cerebral palsy or some kind of mental, physical mental kind of incapability. And he had to go and like wheel her from class to class and everything. Completely changed this kid. Completely changed him, you know? It's like this girl loved him. He felt, wow, somebody loves me. I can do something nice for somebody else. You know, I want this. This is like much nicer than being mean. Yeah. And then the whole thing of respect, then other people respect me and give me positive feedback for this. Yeah. So very often, you know, what I've found with the thought training teachings is when we're in a certain mental state, the thought training teachings tell us to do exactly the opposite of what we feel like doing. You know, and that's why they're the antidote. But in a case of low self-esteem or depression or anxiety, whenever we're like too much focused on ourselves in an unhealthy way, the last thing we want to do is go out and help somebody, because we're too busy sitting there, you know, poor me. Somebody said that they have this image of me now like this, so every time they start feeling sorry for themselves, they remember me. Huh?
Albert Ramos.
Oh, yeah. Right. Yeah, so one of the inmates that Dan and I both visit, he had a tendency to feel sorry for himself. So when I went to see him, you know, I said, yeah, we get stuck in self-pity. We just sit there and suck our thumb and poor me. So he wrote and he said, well, now when I feel self-pity, I see you doing that. Yeah. And so, you know, kind of you know, paying attention to others is the last thing we feel like doing. But that's exactly why it's the thing we need to do. Yeah? Uh-huh.
Something came up in our discussion group yesterday that's kind of like the near enemy of this that I'd love for you to speak about.
Mm-hmm.
It's the tendency to give everything to others, thinking that that's a compassionate action. But it's really, you know, in the end, it's really all about getting back for ourselves. It meaning, you know, we can say to ourselves, oh yeah, I'm working on my compassion, I'm working on my generosity and blah, 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 but we're giving away everything.
Yeah.
To get
Okay. Okay, so this kind of extreme of I'm so compassionate that I'm going to give away everything, and then I'm a mess and other people have to take care of me, but it's because of my compassion. Yeah, or I'm so compassionate. Again, I'm going to go in there and save other people. They can't take care of themselves, so I'm going to save them. And and this is the kind of mind that gets us involved in all sorts of really sticky relationships with people that do not work out well. Yeah, because our motivation, we think it's compassion, but if we look real deeply, there's some genuine compassion, but there's also the underlying wish that if I'm nice, then people will like me. If I do what people want, then they'll like me. And there's this incredible inside need for I need approval from other people. I need kudos from other people. So I'm just going to do everything they want because that's how then they'll like me. Okay? That's what they call codependency. Yeah. And it doesn't help the other person. Doesn't help the other person. And it gets us into a bunch of messes. Yeah, because we help people we think we're helping people, but their minds they're manipulating us, or they're in a bad situation and they aren't taking responsibility for it, and then we're trying to go in and rescue them. But how can we rescue them? We're not them. We can't fix their bad situation. Yeah, and so that gets then very, very confusing because we think, well, I'm being compassionate. Yeah, but what's really feeding it is this wish for, praise and approval and love ourselves. Yeah, and so I think it sometimes it takes us quite a while to recognize that mechanism inside of ourselves. We keep doing it again and again in an attempt to win approval and praise and so on. But we never get enough approval or praise, do we, that way? Yeah, and this is one of the things, one of the ways the mind works that keeps people in bad relationships. Relationships, for example, when there's domestic violence, yeah, why do you go back to a situation of domestic violence? Because I need love and praise and support so much, and I'm tying it to this person, which is the first mistake, because we don't need it from that person, but we think we do. And then how am I going to get it? Well, I'm just going to do everything they want me to do. So even if they beat me, even if they abuse me, I just have to bear it and somehow try and please them. So I keep going back into a situation that is stifling me and that can even be physically dangerous. Yeah. So it's a very deep-rooted mechanism, and it takes a while for us to kind of wake up and say, to look and see, oh, there's a pattern going on in my life. I keep doing this. I keep bending over backwards, trying to help people who I actually cannot help. Yeah, because before they can be helped, they have to want to be helped. And they have to take some responsibility, and they're not doing that. So until they do that, there's really nothing much I can actually do. But to figure that out and then say, okay, I'm just going to keep a respectful distance. It doesn't mean I hate the person. I can still have, and on an emotional level, I can still have compassion for them. Yeah, but I'm not going to get involved in their business, because that's not helping them and it's not helping me. Yeah, and it can feel really strange to do that at the beginning, kind of like, oh, I feel so mean. But you know, actually, we have to really think, what does benefiting someone mean? Yeah, and I know, you know, in my work with people in prison, many of them have told me, especially when there's like drug, alcohol, substance abuse of some kind, that until you actually hit bottom, you don't really want to change. That you'll go to all the programs the court sends you to and still drink and drug on the side until you yourself get to the point where you say, I've got to do something. Yeah? And so, you know, all we can do in that situation is, on a feeling side, have compassion for them. But very often, the most compassionate thing to do is not to buy into their trip, not to enable them to keep going on with that behavior, but just saying no, you know. And it can be torturous to watch somebody you love hit bottom. But sometimes that's the thing that's necessary for them to grow. You know? And one guy told me, several of you have heard me tell this story before, but when he was a juvenile, he was consistently getting in trouble and at juvenile court, and his mother, who loved him dearly, would just keep going to juvenile court and bringing him home and paying whatever fine she had to and doing whatever she had to with the court to get him back safe and sound at home because she loved him, and then he would act out again, and the whole thing kept going again and again and again. And one time he told me, you know, he was in trouble, his mother was in court, he was expecting her to bail him out, and his mother said to the judge, "You keep him, I cannot handle him anymore." And he told me he was so shocked. You know, it was like, oh, you know, and it was his mother doing that, walking out of the courtroom and not bailing him out, that got him to realize he needed to be responsible for himself. Yeah? So what his mom did was an actual act of kindness. Even though at that moment, you know, he felt like, you know, I've been abandoned. But it was really what helped him at that moment to grow up. Okay? So it's to actually see what is a benefit to somebody. I mean, this is why we need to develop wisdom. Why compassion by itself is not sufficient. Yeah, we need wisdom. Yeah, and we need to develop incredible sensitivity so we can know really what somebody needs at a certain point. So I watch with my own teachers. You know, you usually say, Buddhist teachers, you know, kind of, they're so nice and kind to their disciples and always sweet. Not necessarily. They can be really wrathful. Yeah, because that's what the disciple needs at that particular moment.
You know, I mean, what you said, what we really need to do is develop wisdom. You know, when I think about that, that's when I really get that I have to become a Buddha in order to actually help them.
Right.
I am so deluded.
Yeah.
How do I know?
And in my deluded state, it's the blind helping the blind. Yeah.
So I kind of have a little charge around this. I'm going to try to be clear.
Okay.
So in my time around Buddhism, I've heard people say they're Buddhists respond to some, let's say, big event that happens to that person, like, oh, that's just their karma. There's something recently that happened with this. That's why I have this big charge about it. So anyhow, two things for myself: a compassion response to someone who dismisses someone like that, and then also just in terms of
how to, when something big like that happens, in terms of how do you help that person without saying something like, that's just their karma, because that's so dismissive and patronizing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, you know, this people do misuse the idea of karma to either blame the victim or to abnegate responsibility. Okay, and you can tell when they're doing that because it's just, well, that's their karma. There's a certain way of saying it. Well, that's their karma, i.e., I'm not going to worry about it. It's their fault anyway. They deserved it. And it's really a big excuse for ourselves not reaching out. Okay, now in any kind of situation, it is true that what happens is influenced by people's karma. Okay, that is true. But saying that's their karma that's not what that person is meaning. They're not meaning, oh, there's a karmic effect that's ripening here and we need to have compassion for somebody who's undergoing suffering. They're misportraying or misrepresenting the idea of karma to be very dismissive. Okay? So, in those situations, you really have to step in and say, yes, things depend on karma, but we at this very moment are also creating karma. And if there's an opportunity for us to help, and due to our own laziness or self-centeredness we don't help, we're creating the cause ourselves to not be helped when we need it. Yeah. And then I give the example, somebody gets hit by a car, because there's this, before I give the example, there's also this other thing people say, is if I do something to help this person that's suffering, then I'm interfering with their karma. Yeah. So, you know, that kind of they're dying in the hospital, you know, I don't need to give them medicine, I don't need to do this, I'm interfering with their karma, which is also a misrepresentation of the idea of karma. So then I give people this example, okay? You get hit by a car, you're lying there in the street bleeding, and somebody walks by and says, that's just your karma. And I'm not going to, call 911 because I'll be interfering with your karma if I do. I'll say, what would you think at that point? Is that the kind of action the Buddha is teaching us to have? Is that compassionate action? Is that wisdom action? That is garbage. Okay? So at this very moment, we have the opportunity to have compassion and to reach out and benefit somebody. And so we do that. Somebody's suffering, we reach out and benefit. Okay? But then the question is, like I was saying before, to think about what does benefit mean? Yeah. And it doesn't mean rescue them. Okay? And then in terms of using the explanation of karma after a tragedy, I've learned you only do that with people who have already some idea of what karma means. Because for people who don't have that idea, they are in too much pain at that moment that to hear the idea correctly, and they misinterpret it and see it as, well, that person deserved to suffer, which is not at all what the meaning of the statement is. Yeah? So you use it, when you say it in a situation where you're sure the other person can understand it correctly. So what I wanted to talk about this morning is how to deal with the feeling of hostility or anger or threat that comes when we think of people we don't like and and that blocks us from having compassion for them. Yeah, because very clearly anger and compassion cannot exist in the mind at the same time. Compassion wants somebody to be free of suffering. Anger wants them, either to have suffering or for us to get away from them completely. But either way, it's anger and compassion are incompatible. Okay, so first of all, don't get into thinking I shouldn't feel angry, because shoulds don't have anything to do with reality. So it isn't, I shouldn't feel angry, I'm a bad Buddhist if I'm angry, I'm not doing it right, blah, blah, blah. Anger comes in the mind. Yeah. Now the point is, when anger's in the mind, what are we going to choose to do? Are we going to follow the anger and act out of anger and encourage our anger? Or are we going to apply an antidote and subdue our mind? That's the question. Okay, so it isn't a thing of, I'm not supposed to feel this and I shouldn't feel this. Okay, it's we feel what we feel, but what are we going to do about it? Okay, so it's very important for that reason to really think again of the disadvantages of anger and how our own anger harms us. Yeah, and we all have, various very virtuous spiritual aspirations. And, we sincerely mean it when we say we want to cultivate love and compassion equally for everybody. But what is it that obstructs us from doing that? It's anger. So when we think like that, then we see anger obstructs us from fulfilling our own aims, from, actualizing our own wishes, because anger just keeps us stuck in this aversion, mode all the time. So in that way, we really have to be, I think, firmly convinced that anger doesn't help us before we are really going to do something about it. It's this same thing of, you have to hit bottom. So we really have to see, anger is not my protector. Anger is not my benefactor. Anger is what creates the cause for my misery. It's not what protects me from misery. And anger is what creates the cause for injustice. It's not what remedies injustice. Okay? And so to really do some very strong meditation on that, so that we really become completely convinced that, there's no benefit in anger. Okay? Now, having said that, I remember some years ago, I was at the University of Michigan and gave a talk to a group of people who, from the Department of Conflict Resolution and Mediation, and when I started talking about the benefits of the disadvantages of anger, they got really mad at me. And I was so surprised, because of all people, I would think they would have seen the defects of anger. But they said, well, yes, anger has disadvantages, but it also lets you know something else is wrong. And it also activates you to oppose injustice. And I said, you mean there's no other way we can know something's wrong in a situation? Yeah, there's no other gut feeling we could have besides anger that lets us know something's not right? Mm-hmm. And you mean there's no other motivation that we can have besides being furious to intercede in cases of persecution or injustice? Yeah. Because I don't believe that anger's the only thing that we could possibly feel that would get us moving. Mm-hmm. So it's something you need to think about. Yeah, do you think, somewhere inside of you that anger is really, going to help you? And there's all sorts of ways that we may think anger is going to help us. One of the biggest ways I see is anger is going to prevent people from taking advantage of me. Yeah. Did I hit bingo?
I'm just laughing at how when I've been passing and been angry to the point where I was, just uncontrollable anger, and how easy it would be to manipulate me at that point.
So you're saying anger doesn't protect you from being taken advantage of. It opens you up to being taken advantage of. Yeah, that's very true, isn't it? Yeah, because when we're angry, we are not thinking clearly. Somebody can suggest any kind of idea and we'll go along with it. Yeah? But we think, oh, I need anger to protect me. Yeah. Because I think what's missing there is that we aren't able to differentiate the inner experience of anger with being quite firm and decisive in our behavior, okay, or being assertive in our behavior. And being angry and being assertive are very, very different. Okay, very, very different, because you can be assertive with a mind that is quite calm, but your speech is coming across in an assertive way, because that's what you need in that situation to communicate with that person, but you aren't angry at them. Okay. On the other hand, some people are so angry that they become totally passive. So again, it's not that you need to be angry to motivate you to act against injustice, because sometimes anger completely makes you passive. Yeah? Okay, so we have to differentiate the internal feeling from the external behavior. Yeah? This thing about, I've got to be angry, otherwise people will take advantage of me. I see it very often with the inmates, the prisoners that I work with, especially, prison is not a pretty place, but, there's all sorts of stuff that goes on there around respect. And, you've got to respect me, and you can't take advantage of me. So if you're in chow line and somebody cuts in front of you in chow line, that's taken as an aggressive action, and you've got to stand up for yourself at that moment. Otherwise, they're going to take advantage of you later on and bully you in some other way. Or an example that came up in one prison visit was, you just got to go to commissary. Commissary is the store in the prison where they charge you, where you can buy like extra ramen noodles and cookies and toothpaste and things for like much more than it costs on the outside, even though your wage in prison is much less than what you would get for the comparable work on the outside. Anyway, so you went to commissary, you got something, and then somebody intercepts you in the corridor and says, turn over those ramen noodles, And the guys say, if you give him the ramen noodles, you're a has-been, because, that guy's just going to take advantage of you after that. So, maybe I'm naive, okay, but it seems to me that there is a difference between giving somebody something out of fear and giving somebody something because in your own heart you want them to have it. Yeah. So something is very different is going to come across to the other person. If they cut in front of you, or if they want your noodles, you know, and you're afraid and you're intimidated and you give it to them, they're going to pick up on that fear and they're going to feed off of it. And yes, they will take advantage of you. However, you know, I don't think the only solution is to then get in a fight with somebody, because then you both wind up going to the hole, which is a very unpleasant place. But instead, change your mind and say, okay, this sentient being has some real need to look good in front of other people, or they have a real need to appear powerful, or maybe they just really need those noodles, you know? But in any case, I want to benefit them, and so I'm going to give them my place in line, or I'm going to give them the noodles. So that's different than extortion, where you don't have a choice. You are voluntarily giving the noodles. And I think somebody's going to pick up on that, you know, because they're going to know, oh, you know, you have a sense of integrity. I'm not giving you the noodles because I'm afraid of you. I'm giving you the noodles because I want you to be happy. You know, I'm letting you cut in line, not because I'm afraid of you, but because I have enough inner strength to realize that my place in line, clinging on to it, is something really stupid. So you want to come and eat in front of me? That's fine. Yeah. And so how you come across when you're doing that is going to be completely different than how you come across if you're afraid. Yes.
I'm just wondering if there was a way to do that, okay, without the anger. So, like, you know, you're talking about being assertive, so letting that guy know, like, look, dude, that's not all right. What you're doing is not all right, you know. Stepping in front of me in line, but doing it without the anger. You know, I mean, just looking him in the eye and saying, look, that's not okay, man, you know. And I was in front of you, and, you know, that's not cool. So, you know, the person may respond with anger, that's true, and he could escalate from there.
Mm-hmm.
I think if a person could do it in a calm way.
Yeah, that's also true, yes. Yeah. Because the whole idea is if you're calm and you have a sense of your own integrity and say, you know, that's not cool. Yeah. Whereas if you scream and yell and, you know, then it's going to inflame it. And if you're shaking in your boots, they're going to feed off of it. Yeah. Which article?
Someone wrote, Kathy Carl, wrote about confrontation and and I forget what the cause of it was, but he just sort of just, you know, he said to him, do whatever you want, you can kill me. But,
Yeah.
you know, what's that going to get you?
Yeah. He said to the guy who, you know, if you want to fight, I'll fight you. But that's not going to get any of us anywhere. The guy calmed down. Yeah.
I was thinking how similar it was when I was teaching in the classroom. When you go in with fear, the kids just smell it, and they're all testing in the first 5 minutes how you respond. And
Exactly.
if you fail that test, that's it for the rest of the year. And I couldn't get it for at least half a year. But when I was so clear of my own motivation and very firm, it just they can pick up on it.
Yeah.
They just know when you walk in the room and you know it.
Yeah.
And if you care.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Okay, so there's some ways to deal with the anger when it comes up and it disturbs our practice. Okay. So after remembering the disadvantages of anger, then there's some verses the Buddha said that I think are quite helpful. So here's one of them. I think it's from the Dhammapada. He abused me, he struck me, he defeated me, he robbed me. In those who harbor thoughts like these, hatred will never be allayed. For in this world, hatred is never allayed by further acts of hate. It is allayed by non-hatred, i.e. compassion. That is the fixed and ageless law. Okay? So he abused me, he struck me, he defeated me, he robbed me. You know, the more we hold on to those kind of thoughts, the more miserable we're going to be, the more our own anger and hatred are going to increase, the more we'll get into conflicts with other people, the less peaceful our mind's going to be. Right or wrong? What's your experience? When you hold on to anger, what's your experience? We're miserable, aren't we? Okay. Yeah. And so then, for in this world, hatred is never allayed by further acts of hate. Yeah. It is allayed by non-hatred, by compassion. That is the fixed and ageless law. If only our government could learn that. If only the government of every country could learn that, you know. That responding to aggression with aggression does not create peace. And we know that in our personal relationships, don't we? Yeah. Some of us respond with aggression by exploding. Some of us respond with aggression by totally withdrawing and not engaging. Okay? But neither of those strategies, because they both come from the same mind state of anger or hatred, neither of them brings about peace. Neither of them repairs the relationship with the other person. Yeah? Now, when you say it is only allayed by compassion, then that's when people say, but then they'll just take advantage of you. But we're not talking, compassion doesn't mean doing everything somebody else wants. Compassion means wanting them to be free of suffering and its causes. Sometimes what people want is what creates their suffering. Yeah, so being compassionate doesn't mean being goody two-shoes and caving in every time somebody makes a demand. It means really trying to understand where that person's coming from. Yeah, what's going on inside of them? What is it like to be them? What are their real needs and concerns? Okay? And so I can't help but think that, you know, after 9/11, most of my friends from other countries, they tell me that after 9/11, everybody had so much sympathy for the U.S. and so much empathy, and, you know, people, their hearts went out for what happened here. But we weren't able to, we couldn't see that or channel that in a good direction. And as we know, we responded to it by starting a couple of wars. And as a result of that, our prestige on an international level went, yeah, because my foreign friends told me, you know, you had our sympathy right after 9/11, and then after we saw how the government responded, then that goodwill vanished. Yeah. So, you know, it could be an interesting thing sometimes when somebody is being aggressive towards us. It would certainly take them off guard if we go and we say, okay, what's happening? Why are you unhappy? What is it you're really wanting? What is it you're really feeling? Yeah. Even on a personal level, you know, when somebody, sometimes we get the feeling that somebody's deliberately trying to push our buttons, yeah, or we see that we're stuck in some kind of we're playing a role, they're playing a role, and we're just not getting along, it can be really good to go to that person and say, okay, what are you feeling? What are you really needing in this situation? And this is how I'm feeling, and this is kind of the kind of relationship I would like to find a way for us to come to. Yeah. And especially for somebody who is trying to push our buttons, that's going to completely disarm them. They're not going to know what to say. Yeah. And it lets them know that we know something's going on. But it also isn't threatening and isn't aggressive. And if we genuinely care about them, they pick up on that. If we say that as a tool to manipulate them, they will pick up on that. But if we genuinely care, it's very disarming. Okay? Okay, then there's another quote here from one of the sutras by Bhikkhu Anuruddha. And Anuruddha, one of the Buddha's disciples, very, very peaceful, harmonious person, and he, is living in community with all these other monastics, and he talks about here how he sees that community life and how he creates harmony. So you may not be living in a community of monastics, but you live in your family, you work in your workplace. We're always in different groups of people. So this same advice applies for whatever group of people we're in. Okay? So Anuruddha said, I think thus, it is a gain for me. It is a great gain for me that I am living with companions in the holy life. I maintain physical acts of love towards these venerable ones, both openly and privately. I maintain verbal acts of love towards them, both openly and privately. I maintain mental acts of love towards them, both openly and privately. I consider, why should I not set aside what I wish to do and do what these venerable ones wish to do? Then I set aside what I wish to do and do what these venerable ones wish to do. We are different in body, but one in mind. Isn't that beautiful? Yeah. So, in your family or in your office place, yeah, to maintain physical acts of kindness towards the people you're with, to greet them and make eye contact, to bring in little sweets or something to the people at work, to clean up the coffee machine even though nobody asks you to, yeah, to reach out to a colleague who's having a hard day and say, wow, I understand what you're going through, or how can I help? Hold on, okay? Maintain verbal acts of kindness, be encouraging. Yeah, be supportive, show that we understand. Point out people's good qualities. That's a practice that would be really helpful for us to do, is really to train in pointing out people's good qualities. And then mentally, also maintaining acts of love, both openly and privately. So thinking good thoughts about those people, wishing them well, generating compassion for them, forgiving them, having some empathy for their situation. Yeah. And then what he said he considers, why should I just not let go of what I'm clinging on to and do what everybody else wants to do? Yeah? Why shouldn't I do that? And this is such a good question to ask ourselves sometimes, because sometimes we're so clinging on to what we want, thinking, I want to have my way, I want to do this, I'm going to push until it's done. But we push, and even everybody eventually goes along with us. Do we really enjoy it? Because the other people around us, they're just doing it because of coercion, not because they really want to. So what do they call that? Winning the battle and losing the war? You got your way, but you can't really be happy with it. So, why shouldn't I set aside what I want and do what the others want? This is assuming what they want to do is virtuous and in accord with the Dharma. I'm not talking about, I don't want to do a dirty business deal and they do, so why shouldn't I do it? I'm not talking about that. Okay? But, in other words, why do I need to hold on so tightly to my own opinions, my own way, when everybody else clearly wants to do it in another way? When there's a discussion and we're all brainstorming together, everybody should express their opinion. And at that time you can really put forth the pros and cons of the pros of your idea and the cons of everybody's idea, because you're discussing and you're sharing information. But once a decision is made, why do we keep pushing? Once kind of it's clear that people want to go in a certain direction, why do we keep pushing? But it's got to be my way. Yeah. So, if it's going to involve somebody's safety and, people want to go do something really stupid and dangerous, okay, then push to have your way. But if it's not a situation like that, if it's just a situation of, I want pink and you want orange, then, can we chill out? And not just like, well, okay, they all want to do it, so I'll do it their way. Drag my feet, let them know I'm unhappy and disgruntled. Not like that. But really say, everybody wants to do it that way. I want to promote harmony. So I'll do that. The rest of the family wants to go out for Chinese food. I've been eating Chinese food for 3 days in a row. I really don't feel like eating it again. But they want to go and it makes them happy. And I want to make them happy. And it's really no sweat off my back to eat Chinese food again. Actually, I'm quite fortunate to have any food to eat. So why am I complaining? And let's just go out and have the family dinner at the Chinese restaurant and have a good time. Instead of, I gotta eat Chinese food again. Yeah, you all order something. I just don't know what I want to eat. I guess I'll just have some rice. And then everybody's trying to chat at dinner and we're just like, can we leave yet? Is it over? Can I go home and get a hamburger? Kind of 15-year-old behavior when we're 45. Okay. So, it's very interesting, in how the Buddha set up the monastic community is when we are making decisions, there's a period of discussion, everybody shares their idea, yeah? Then to solidify the decision, there is a formal action that you do where you say, we're going to do this, if anybody disagrees, please speak. And if you agree, please keep silent. So this is after the discussion. So at that time, unless you have a good reason, you have to join in the consensus. Yeah. In other words, if you don't have a good reason and it's just, well, I don't feel like doing that and I want my way, you commit an offense by not going along with the consensus that is otherwise established. Interesting, isn't it? So it's teaching us at that time to be happy to support the group. Yeah. Of course, if there's a good reason, the group decides that they want to spend, $500,000 on I don't know, what could we spend $500,000 on that is worthless? A toilet. We want a golden toilet. Yeah, so we decide to spend $500,000 on a golden toilet. Then, when it comes time to do the transaction, then please, you should say, I don't agree. Yeah? But if that's not the situation, yeah. So it's an interesting way to train the mind. Yeah, because sometimes when we don't get our way, we kind of pout. Anybody here pout when they don't get their way? Yeah. What's a politer word for pout? We don't like to think ourselves as sulk. Okay, we sulk. We're uncooperative. We become uncooperative. I didn't get my way, so I'm not going to cooperate with anybody else. Yeah, to keep rubbing it in that. Yeah. Okay. So I think that's quite beautiful. You just go along. Not because you feel stifled and you feel that they've taken away your autonomy and everything, but because you want to contribute to harmony. Yeah. Okay, I think there's more, but I think we have to hold it for another time because we're out of time. But read Working with Anger. That contains a lot of other, because I was going to go through some of the antidotes to anger, but if you read Working with Anger, that will be just as good. Let me see if there's any other good quotations here.
Can I share one experience? It might be helpful if people work with other people.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been a rainbow gathering for 30 years. And for 25 years, what we did when the police were angry, and there's a lot of different types of police, and LEOs we call them, Washington comes. So what we did was we surrounded them in Hudville. Well, they didn't like that. We love you and we love you. And one time they got out rifles and shot paint gun balls at us. But what we then came to realize was we weren't verbally saying we love you. We took advantage of them by touching them and not asking permission.
Yeah.
Even a pat on the shoulder.
Yeah.
It needs permission to touch.
Right.
People work with others, and that gesture of, well, who knows where someone else is at.
Right. 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 Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for a cop, that can be very more threatening than, Yeah, they don't know what to do with that. Yeah. Okay.